Hi there. Here is a helpful hint from Miss Kirsch for you. Tonight's topic is the distributive property. The first thing that you need to be thinking about when you see the words distributive property is, what is this really all about? What does it mean? When I see the words distributive property, I think about the operation of multiplication, because we know that when we're multiplying, we can use the distributive property to make it a little bit simpler for us. The next thing I'm thinking about is that root word to distribute. When I distribute something, it's sort of like I'm passing it out. I like to think about when we pass out papers in class. You're distributing them to the people who need it, or you're passing them out. So basically, when I think about using the distributive property, what I'm really doing is passing out the digits of a number, which we'll get into as we go along here on this helpful hint. So let's kind of see what it looks like in action. When I see this first equation, I'm thinking to myself, 43 times 62, that looks pretty tough. So what I want to do is use a strategy to make it easier to solve. My most efficient strategy is to utilize the distributive property. So when I first start with the distributive property, I take a look at this 43 and I see it as two digits, a 4 and a 3. I also see my 62, my other factor, as a 6 and a 2. The first thing that I need to do is focus on that 4, which I know actually stands for 40 because it's in my tens place. So the value of that 4 is actually 4 tens or a 40. So what I first need to do is take that 40 and distribute it to the 6 on the other factor, or the 60, because I know that the 6 is in the tens place. Now I also need to make sure I distribute that 4 to my ones place, which is my 2. So now what I've essentially done here is I've taken this 43 and I've broken it down, and I'm using my tens place first. So my first expression that I need to write down is my 40 times 60. So I have 40 times 60. Now I've also taken that 40 and I've distributed it to the 2. So my next expression will be 40 times 2. So remember, so far I've got 40 times 60 and 40 times 2. I'm not done yet, because if you look, I've done nothing with this 3. So now my next step is to take that 3 and do the same. I need to distribute it across to the other factor. So we're going to look at it the same way that we looked at our 4 or our 40. I first want to take my 3 and distribute it to the tens place in the other number, or the 6, which is a 60. And then I also want to take my 3 and distribute it to the 2, which I know actually stands for 2 because we're in the ones place. Right, so now I've got my 3 distributed both to the tens place and to the ones place on the other factor. So what I have here, girls and boys, now is 3 times 60 plus 3 times 2. Notice when you're looking at and using the distributive property, if you have 1, 2, 3, 4 digits in your actual equation, you're going to have 4 expressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you do not have 4 expressions, it means that you're missing something and you have to go back and take a look. Now, what I need to do first is solve the the expressions that are in our parentheses. So 40 times 60, I know that I can use my knowledge of my 4 times 6, right, which is 24. And I have to kind of tack those 2 zeros on or make it 100 times greater. So that will give me 2,400. Then I need to move over to my next expression here, and I'm going to do the same thing. 4 times 2, I know, is actually 8. Tack on the 0 is going to give me 80. And then I'm just going to keep moving on down the line. 3 times 60 is going to give me 180. And then my last one's quite simple because it was both of my ones place. 3 times 2, which is going to give me 6. Now, you can see that you still have to add up all of these products, right? And that can get kind of tough, especially because we have a number over here that has many digits in it. So I recommend using that strategy that we've been practicing a lot in class and setting it up as an algorithm. So your algorithm, remember, you want to keep that biggest number on top so that you can line things up underneath it. 2,400 plus 180. Notice I skipped the 80 because it only has 2 digits, right? Then I put it in next, plus 80 plus 6. All you're going to do is add this like a normal algorithm, right? Starting at the top, you've got zeros plus 6 is going to give you a 6. Go to your tens place. You have 8 plus 8, which is 16. Remember, you can't fit 16 here, so you're going to put the 6 here, and you're going to carry the 1 into the hundreds place. So now you have 4 plus 2, which will give you another 6. And then you're bringing down your 2 because you're not adding anything to it. So your final answer, your product of this huge equation, is 2,666. And we got there by using the distributive property. Let's see if you can do one on your own. At this point, pause the screen and see if you can figure it out. Now remember, as you go along, to keep in mind the value of each digit. So this is not really a 1, it actually stands for a 100. So pause the screen right now and see how you can do. Good luck. How it turned out. As you were going through, I hope that you remember to start in your biggest place on your left-hand factor. In this case, it was your hundreds place. So you took your 100 and you distribute it to the 8. So you had 100 times 8. Very good so far. Now you went to your tens place and you realized that your 2 was actually a 20. So you did 20 times 8. You distributed it to the 8 just like you did with your 100. Now you moved on to your last digit in your left-hand factor, which was your 5. So you ended up doing 5 times 8. So now what you ended up doing next was you took all of those expressions and you solved for them. 100 times 8 was 800. 20 times 8 was 160, right? Because you can do 2 times 8, tack on your 0. And then your last one, 5 times 8, was 40. What you ended up doing here, you may not have needed the algorithm because you could kind of mentally do 800 plus 160 got you to 960. And then you added your 40 on. And because you know 6 plus 4 is a 10, you know that 960 plus 40 will get you to 1,000. How did you do? If you made a mistake, go back and take a look and see if you can make corrections based on this screen. You may have to pause the video again to kind of give yourself a chance to look it over. Here are some last thoughts to help you remember things when you're looking at the distributive property. Remember, you have to distribute each digit of the first number to the digit of the second. In other words, make sure that every single one of your digits is accounted for when you're writing your expressions. Also, remember to keep in mind the value of each digit. The 1 in the hundreds place actually stands for 100, not 1. And I hope that you learned a little bit more about the distributive property and you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with it. And before I go, remember to keep thinking, mathematicians. Until next time.